the match that I had with Goldberg, man, it was horrible. There was never a time in my career where I didn't feel like no matter what happened, that I couldn't figure out a way to make it all work. He got concussed. It's 98 degrees. It was just like a train wreck. And the more I tried to fix it, the worse it got. I'm not pointing fingers. It's just one of those things that happened where I just didn't have it in me physically anymore to make things right.
Goldberg did not enter professional wrestling through the traditional path. He was a former NFL defensive tackle who stepped into WCW in the late 1990s and within months became the most destructive force on television. What followed was not a gradual rise. It was an eruption, an undefeated streak that climbed past 170 victories, a United States Championship run that felt secondary compared to the momentum building behind him. And then, the defining moment defeating Hollywood Hogan for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship in front of a sold-out Georgia Dome crowd, a victory that symbolized WCW's peak during the Monday Night War. His matches were short, often brutally short. Spear, jackhammer, 3 seconds. He did not build suspense through intricate counters or technical exchanges. He built it through inevitability. When his music hit, the outcome already felt written in the air. The audience did not wait to see what would happen. They reacted because they believed they already knew.
Let's talk about something no one likes to hear. Goldberg might be WWE's most unprofessional wrestler. Now, before you get mad, hear me out. Yes, Goldberg is a powerhouse. Yes, his presence is legendary. But his track record in the ring? That's a whole different story. He's injured multiple opponents over the years, and not by mistake, but through repeated carelessness. This isn't UFC. Wrestling is a choreographed art form built on trust. But Goldberg never evolved, and others paid the price. It started with L.A. Park, one spear, and legit knee injury. Even after that, he hit him jackhammer. Same incident happened with Jericho when Neville got injured, but he argued with the ref mid-match to stop it. Scott Steiner injured by a punch, not a finisher, a punch, but the worst, Bret Hart. Before the match, Bret specifically told Goldberg not to injure him, and Goldberg gave him a kick that ended his career. And this match, Goldberg nearly dropped Taker on his neck. One wrong angle and the dead man could have been gone forever. And let's not forget, the guy injured himself multiple times. Punched a car window, broke his hand, slamming his head backstage, even knocked himself out mid-spear. William Regal once said Goldberg would forget spots, get lost mid-match, and drag matches into confusion. No doubt, Goldberg was strong, but a great wrestler never was.
And yet inside the industry, the conversation was never simple. Some veterans questioned his polish, others questioned the speed of his push, but even those who criticized the mechanics rarely denied the impact. Years later, he would return to WWE, defeat Brock Lesnar in under 2 minutes, and remind an entirely new generation that certain forces in wrestling do not fade with time. Goldberg was never just about matches. He was about presence. He was about atmosphere. He was about the moment before contact. So when WWE legends were asked about Goldberg, what did they actually say? When wrestlers from that era are asked about Goldberg, the tone often changes. It becomes less about opinion and more about memory. Because for those who shared the locker room with him, Goldberg was not an abstract debate. He was a presence that altered the rhythm of an entire company.
Goldberg, to me, was one of the most unprofessional wrestlers there ever was in the business. For Bill Goldberg to be in the Hall of Fame, he hurt everybody he worked with. You might as well wrestle a real gorilla. He was the most dangerous guy to work with. He hurt everybody he worked with. I remember Kurt Hennig being in pain all the time from the matches they had. The last words I said to Bill before we went out and had that match where he injured and ended my career, I said, Bill, whatever you do out there, don't hurt me. We'll do whatever you want. We can do anything. We just don't go nuts.
Kevin Nash has often said that Goldberg represented something WCW desperately needed at the time. A simple concept executed at the right moment. In a roster filled with established names and long layered matches, Goldberg brought immediacy. Nash understood the business side of it. The crowd reaction was undeniable. The merchandise moved. The ratings responded. Whether a match lasted 90 seconds or 9 minutes, the audience felt satisfied because the spectacle delivered exactly what it promised.
Your WWE debut was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
When that did finally happen, you interrupting The Rock.
It was a lot of fun, and big kudos to him for having foresight that it would be something that would go over. Like, he's very unselfish. At the end of the day, it's a dance, man. We all need everyone involved to be a part because it's a well-oiled machine. I always tell people that I couldn't have had the streak if it wasn't for 176, 3, 2.
Chris Jericho, on the other hand, has spoken more critically over the years. He questioned the creative limitations, the lack of depth in certain storylines, and the tension that can arise when someone is elevated rapidly. Yet even Jericho has acknowledged that Goldberg's connection with the crowd was real. It was not manufactured through clever promos or long-term arcs. It was visceral.
And this is not a criticism of Bill, it's just a fact. Bill came into WCW with zero wrestling experience, very little wrestling knowledge, and very little wrestling interest, but it was a great opportunity, and Bill was done with his football career. He got into WCW, we put him into the power plant, we fast-tracked him. Before he knew it, he's beating everybody. He was 187-0 or whatever it was, and now he's beating Hulk Hogan in the main event. So he got thrust into the limelight with very little fundamental skills. We worked hard to protect Bill. The reason he went to 176-0 or whatever the number was is because he wasn't able to have 4, 5, or 6 minute match that went back and forth. He comes out strong, the heel takes advantage of him, starts to cheat, he has to sell, he goes down, he makes his big comeback. That's a basic match, right? Bill didn't have the experience to do that. He was just, I'm going to snort fire, I'm going to spear you, I'm going to jackhammer you, I'm going to pin you. That's all he could do.
Then there is Brock Lesnar, perhaps the only modern figure whose aura can be compared in raw intensity. When Goldberg returned to WWE and defeated Lesnar in under 2 minutes, the result shocked not only fans but the locker room itself. It was a reminder that Goldberg's formula built in the late 1990s could still disrupt expectations decades later. Lesnar did not treat him as a novelty. He treated him as a legitimate threat.
I don't want to get too into it, but I just want to know how you felt, because obviously you've had words for Bill Goldberg, and then for them to use that in a promo. When you heard that they wanted to use that in the promo and have Gunther say that, what were your initial feelings about it?
I think Bill got off light.
Across interviews and documentaries, one theme repeats itself. Wrestlers do not describe Goldberg as the most technical performer of his generation. They describe him as dangerous in the best professional sense of the word. His intensity was not theatrical exaggeration. It was something opponents felt physically and psychologically before the bell even rang. In an industry built on illusion, Goldberg forced even seasoned veterans to adjust. And that adjustment says more than any debate about skill ever could. But how did that aura translate into dominance? That brings us to the streak and the myth that grew around it.
I'm thinking you're probably not a big fan of Bill Goldberg's, are you?
Probably. No, I don't have any problem with Bill Goldberg. No, I haven't seen you.
Copy of you?
Well, you know, like what they say, imitation is a most sincere form of flattery, or something to that degree.
Don't you tell the Rock to shut his mouth, honey, or come out there and slap the taste out of your mouth, baby. Mr. Bill Goldberg.
Dang it. Gilbert, dang it. Gilbert! Hey, it's Goldberg! Wait a minute!
I need security out here right now. Line up, face the front. Sir. Y'all look like a bunch of little Oompa Loompas. What the hell kind of security is that? You are in so much trouble. You've been making fun of Goldberg for years. I don't blame you for wanting to whip his ass. Hell, I'm gonna take a front row seat right here and you bring your whisker biscuit monkey ass in here. I'll kick your ass all over Atlanta. Come on.
Goldberg just went.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Physically. I'm not so sure I would touch Goldberg. No. Oh, Gilbert now just. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, the rock from snail. Oh, over the.
By the time Goldberg captured the WCW World Heavyweight Championship in 1998, the undefeated streak had already become larger than the man himself. The number kept climbing. 100, 120, 150. It did not matter whether every count was historically precise. What mattered was the belief. The audience believed he could not be stopped, and in professional wrestling, belief is power. The streak worked because it was simple. There were no complicated twists, no weekly doubt about whether he would survive. Every opponent entered the ring knowing the same thing the crowd knew. The match would be short, the impact would be violent, and the ending would feel inevitable. Spear, jackhammer, 3 seconds. It became ritual.
This is why you should never mess. After Goldberg left the ring, his young son was standing in the crowd watching. That's when Goldberg's rivals, MVP and Bobby Lashley, tried to intimidate him. They thought they could scare the kid, but it only lasted a few seconds. Suddenly, Goldberg stormed back into the ring and speared MVP out of nowhere. This is why you don't even think about touching a wrestler's son.
Comparisons were unavoidable. The Undertaker built his legend through longevity and mystique. Stone Cold Steve Austin built his through rebellion and defiance. Goldberg built his through destruction. Where others told stories over 20 minutes, Goldberg told his in 90 seconds. The result was not subtle, but it was effective. WCW television revolved around the anticipation of his next appearance. Veterans later admitted that the streak changed locker room psychology. When someone becomes unbeatable on screen, it alters how others are positioned. It can create tension. It can create quiet resentment. But it can also create clarity. WCW, during its most chaotic period, had one figure the audience could anchor itself to. Goldberg was that anchor. The myth only grew stronger after it ended. Losing to Kevin Nash at Starrcade became a turning point not just for Goldberg, but for WCW itself. Many fans felt the momentum shift that night. The aura was cracked. The illusion of invincibility was gone. And yet, even in defeat, the image remained powerful. Because the streak was never only about wins and losses, it was about dominance sustained long enough to feel historic. Years later, when WWE revived the idea of Goldberg as an unstoppable force, the formula did not need reinvention. It needed reactivation. The audience remembered, the locker room remembered, and once again the myth proved durable. But myth alone does not define legacy. Legacy is also shaped by those who stood across the ring. That is where the perspective of his opponents becomes essential.
Thank you for coming down here to the Broken Skull Sessions.
I will tell you that there is no other time that I have actually smiled driving up to this part of California because I knew that I was going to be able to hang out with you. And from afar, I've always been a fan, and you know, we've got to be good friends throughout the years. And I got to tell you, man, I greatly appreciate your friendship, and I'm a huge fan of yours. And we have so many parallels. It's absolutely hilarious, and you're just as good of a guy as you were a worker. And for that, I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure talking to you. And if I'm mistaken in an airport tomorrow and someone calls me Goldberg, I will smile at them and say thank you. Thanks for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking with Goldberg. And that's the bottom line. Why? Because Stone Cold said so.
To understand Goldberg fully, you have to step into the ring across from him. Because from the outside, dominance looks theatrical. From the inside, it feels different. Diamond Dallas Page has spoken with a mixture of respect and realism about their match at Halloween Havoc in 1998. That night was different. It was longer, more competitive. Page structured the match carefully, guiding the rhythm, adding near falls, building suspense in a way Goldberg's earlier bouts had not required. Many within the industry still consider it one of Goldberg's most complete performances. Page later explained that Goldberg listened, adjusted, and delivered. The aura was intact, but there was also cooperation. That match proved he could do more than people assumed. The story with Bret Hart carries a heavier tone. During a match in 1999, a stiff kick led to a concussion that would contribute to the premature end of Hart's in-ring career. Hart has spoken openly about the frustration and the physical consequences. Goldberg has expressed regret. Within wrestling circles, the incident became part of a broader narrative. Was Goldberg too intense? Was he too green for the spotlight he had been given? The debate lingers not as accusation, but as complexity. When he arrived in WWE in the early 2000s, his rivalry with Triple H became symbolic of something larger. It was not simply face versus heel, it was outsider versus system. Goldberg had built his name in WCW with minimal dialogue and maximum impact. WWE, with its longer match structures and layered storytelling, demanded adaptation. Some felt he never fully integrated into that machine. Others believed he was never meant to. And then there was Brock Lesnar. Their first encounter in 2004 felt awkward, burdened by contract uncertainty and divided fan reactions. But when they met again years later, the dynamic shifted. Goldberg's decisive victory at Survivor Series shocked audiences precisely because Lesnar represented the modern, unstoppable athlete. In that moment, Goldberg was no longer a relic of the Monday Night War. He was a reminder that certain forces do not age the way others do. Across these rivalries, one truth becomes clear. Opponents did not describe him as subtle, they described him as intense. They described him as real. In an industry built on timing and cooperation, intensity can be both an asset and a risk, and that duality shaped how the locker room viewed him. Because beyond the matches, there was another layer to Goldberg's story. The politics, the perception, the divide.
So that night, I went out and I fulfilled their request to be beaten for the first time at Starrcade by Kevin Nash. So I don't know if anybody knew it was my birthday. I don't think anybody cared it was my birthday.
It's Bill's birthday, December the 27th, that he got beat because he came and told me that day. But it's also the anniversary of my mother's death. December 27th, 1994, the day my mom died of cancer. I think I topped you. That's real. I just walked away from him.
Goldberg's rise was meteoric, and in professional wrestling, meteoric rises rarely come without friction. He did not spend years traveling the independent circuit. He did not grind through small venues refining holds in front of 50 people. He arrived from professional football, trained quickly, and within a short period became the centerpiece of a national wrestling promotion. For some veterans, that reality was difficult to ignore. In locker rooms built on hierarchy and tradition, paying dues has always mattered. Many wrestlers from earlier generations endured long roads before touching a world championship. Goldberg's ascent challenged that unwritten code. To some, he represented opportunity and fresh energy. To others, he represented acceleration without apprenticeship.
Did you feel like you had to redo the WrestleMania 20 match with Brock? Like, obviously, you probably didn't get the reaction you expected to get from that match.
The unnecessary chance that could prove fatal. Now, who's the better mat wrestler?
Oh, no question. I mean, but the reality is that things were a little difficult back then in a lot of ways. It was a compound, complex sentence of professional wrestling at that point. I mean, you had him leaving, you had me leaving, you know, the animosity that was publicly known that I had for the business, and it wasn't a good time, and the fans turned on us, and as well they should have, because why are they going to cheer for two guys who are out the door the next day?
Scott Steiner once spoke about Goldberg's intensity as both genuine and isolating. Hulk Hogan, who understood the business of aura better than almost anyone, recognized what Goldberg meant for WCW at its commercial peak. Hogan knew what it was to become a cultural force, and in Goldberg, he saw a different version of that phenomenon. Not colorful, not flamboyant, but just as effective in commanding attention. The tension was not always loud. It was often quiet. A difference in philosophy, a difference in style. Goldberg's matches were built around impact and brevity. WWE's established system, especially during the early 2000s, leaned toward layered storytelling, longer segments, and character-driven arcs. Integrating a force of nature into a structure built on dialogue and pacing required compromise on both sides. Yet through all the politics and perception, one fact remained consistent. When Goldberg walked through the curtain, the audience reacted. Loudly, instantly, without hesitation. In wrestling, that reaction carries weight beyond opinion. It is the currency that ultimately defines relevance. He was not universally embraced behind the scenes. Few top stars ever are. But he was undeniably effective in front of the crowd. And that effectiveness shaped the era in ways that statistics alone cannot measure. Because Goldberg was more than a streak. He was a symbol of a specific time in wrestling history. And that time was changing. When WCW collapsed and the Monday Night War ended, many believed Goldberg's moment had passed with it. His dominance had been tied so closely to that late 1990s atmosphere that it seemed inseparable from the company itself. WCW had needed a destroyer. WWE at that time was evolving into something more layered and character-driven. The question was simple but significant. Could a force built on immediacy survive in a system built on narrative depth? His initial WWE run in the early 2000s produced mixed reactions. The audience respected the name, but the environment was different. Matches were longer. Expectations were different. Goldberg was no longer the new unstoppable phenomenon. He was an established figure, stepping into a new ecosystem. Winning the World Heavyweight Championship confirmed his status, yet the chemistry never felt identical to his WCW peak. It was not failure, it was contrast. And then years later, something unexpected happened. In 2016, Goldberg returned. He was older, the streak was long gone. The aura many assumed belonged to another era, Standing across from Brock Lesnar, the modern embodiment of athletic dominance, Goldberg had little to prove. Yet in under 2 minutes, he dismantled him. That moment reframed his legacy. Paul Heyman later described the shock of that return, not as nostalgia, but as validation. Goldberg's presence still mattered. Roman Reigns, who eventually faced him for a world title, treated him not as a novelty act, but as a legitimate figure whose name carried history and threat. The younger generation did not grow up with the original streak, yet they understood the weight of the entrance, the chant, the spear. Goldberg's style did not evolve into something intricate. It remained direct, explosive, focused. But in an era increasingly filled with complex sequences and extended matches, that directness felt almost refreshing. He represented an earlier philosophy: impact over duration, intensity over embellishment. His second run did not recreate 1998. It did something more subtle. It proved that aura, when authentic, does not expire easily. And that realization leads to the final question: how should Goldberg truly be remembered? Goldberg's legacy does not fit neatly into traditional categories. He was never the most technically refined wrestler of his generation. He did not build his career on 60-minute classics or intricate storytelling inside the ropes. His catalog of matches is not defined by complexity. It is defined by force. Yet in professional wrestling, legacy is not measured by technique alone. It is measured by memory, and memory often begins before the first move is executed. When people recall Goldberg, they remember the walk through the hallway with security on either side. They remember the heavy breathing, the controlled intensity, the way the crowd volume rose before he even stepped between the ropes. They remember the spear cutting through an opponent with sudden violence. They remember the jackhammer lifting someone high into the air before driving them down with finality. Some wrestlers are remembered for matches that unfolded slowly and carefully. Goldberg is remembered for moments that detonated. The debate will always remain. Was he limited? Was he protected? Did the streak inflate the myth beyond the mechanics? Those questions are part of the conversation, but so is another truth. Few performers in modern wrestling history have been able to create anticipation as quickly and as completely as he did. Goldberg did not ask the audience to invest in layers. He demanded their reaction immediately, and they gave it. In the end, some wrestlers are remembered for what they did inside the match. Goldberg is remembered for what happened before the match even began. And perhaps that is what makes him impossible to duplicate.